Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Ohio State Buckeyes continuing to stay active in the transfer portal. And I'll say this, I'm a big fan of how Ohio State is addressing this transfer portal. They're taking kind of quality guys over quantity. And you look at up and down this transfer class outside of a guy like Tristan Gebbia, who's coming in pretty much as a graduate assistant. Like, these guys are going to be playing meaningful snaps for Ohio State. And it was kind of like Ryan Day just taking a look at the depth chart and saying, where do we need to maybe supplement a little bit? Because Ohio State crushes it in the high school recruiting trail. And now you develop those guys, and you take a look at your roster heading into a season and say, okay, we got to add body on the defensive line. And that is exactly what Ryan Day and Ohio State does, landing former top 100 recruit from the 2021 class, Tywone Malone, coming from Ole Miss. Now, before we get into what Tywone Malone brings to the Ohio State Buckeyes, just want to say thank you to you guys. Truly, all the support you guys have shown really does mean a lot. Over 5,000 subscribers on the channel, on our way to 6,000. Can't thank you guys enough. So whether you're rocking with us, talking high school recruiting, talking the transfer portal, talking summer scouting, which for Ohio State fans, we have Ohio State coming up. We appreciate all the support you guys have shown. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Ohio State fans, it's going to be a very, very busy month of May on the recruiting trail, so stay locked in for that as well. Dale, I'm going to kick this one off to you. How are we feeling about Tywone Malone bringing his talents up to Columbus?
I mean, at the end of the day, they needed to add some beef in the middle. Like, what they have right now is athletic defensive linemen, I mean, led by Michael Hall, but they're really not much over 300 pounds or kind of guys hovering maybe around or just below that level. And you look at who they got to beat this year, it's Michigan and Penn State in the Big Ten, and both those teams have two really good running backs apiece, have good offensive lines, and are going to play a really physical style of football. So those are the two teams Ohio State needs to beat, and they're now adding guys like Tywone Malone who are essentially missing pieces of what they have, which is just not enough physicality on that.
Yeah, and I don't even like the interior. I feel like that's not even meant to sell a guy like Michael Hall short. I mean, I included him in one of my way too early 2024 NFL mock drafts. I think Michael Hall is a phenomenal player and going to be a good NFL player and, quite frankly, very good for Ohio State. He's been very good for Ohio State. But you're right. Tywone Malone brings a little something different, right? Michael Hall, more of the speedier guy, good first step, kind of can get in the backfield. Tywone Malone, a little bit more of a space eater. And, like, you go back and watch him in high school, like, there's a reason why he was a top 100 recruit coming out. Like, this dude is a phenomenal athlete, but he's just big. He's big. He's hard to move off the ball, and he's explosive. One of the things I know they were kind of critical of him is that pad level, but you know Ohio State's going to figure that out with the phenomenal defensive line coaching that they have. And I really do agree with the idea that Tywone Malone really does complement some of the players they already have on that Ohio State defensive line.
And I do wonder if that, like, you got two guys now from Ole Miss who are coming there and now coming into the Ohio State system. Like, are these two younger players looking at it? There's just so much continuity in what Ohio State has. Like, there's not coaching turnover. And right now you see Ole Miss, they're turning over coordinators really quickly. They're turning over personnel really quickly. And it's not to say, like, Ole Miss is what it is, but it's just not that built, established level of Ohio State coaching and development. And I do wonder, are these guys, like, do they take an extra jump now that they're at Ohio State? Because at the end of the day, Ohio State has been a premier developer of talent.
100%. And Larry Johnson, I think, is one of the more unsung. There's a lot of emphasis that gets put on Brian Hartline coaching the wide receivers, and that's not to take away anything that Brian Hartline is doing. He's the best in the game at that. Larry Johnson is probably the best defensive, at least one of the best defensive line coaches in the country as well. You think about all the talent that they've put out on the defensive line to the NFL. Like, no doubt Tywone Malone's looking at this Ohio State program and saying, that's what's going to get me to the next level. And now you have a couple of young cats going into their third year, Jack Sawyer, JT, Tywone Malone now adding to the list. This defensive line is very talented, but now it's also very deep. And I think that's very important.
And that is a unit that, again, as much talent as they've had in the past couple of years, it really hasn't been turned up that much, and they haven't been dominating teams like they were with the Bosas and Draymond Jones and some of those type of guys. I do think you're kind of waiting for that to reassert itself and take them back up, because when Ohio State was really good, yeah, they could score, but those defenses were, I feel like people kind of lose track of that, because obviously Ryan Day now more of an offensive guy, but back when Urban was running the show, they were I mean, nightmares on defense. Like,
you remember trust me, we know all too well about Ohio State and their defense with the Bosa's, Chase Young. Like that was freaky. I am optimistic. I don't even want to say this, but it's true. I really do think Ohio State's defense is going to take a lot of strides forward this year. Jim Knowles came in, and we mentioned this last summer. Like there was going to be some growing pains. Like the difference in style of defense that Jim, kind of similar to what you saw in Michigan in 2021. Like this is a very different defense that is kind of, quite frankly, hard to grasp. Jim Knowles does a lot of different things, and I think the first year, a lot of the players were kind of thinking a lot, right, and reacting because they're trying to learn this scheme. I think year two, you're going to see kind of like you saw with Michigan, guys be a little bit more, we're going to go play and make plays, and we have a better understanding of what this defense is and what's being asked of us. And so in terms of that Ohio State defense, like the talent's all there. And I think that's the most important part. I do think step two is understanding that defense under Jim Knowles, who's proven to be one of the best in the game. I think you're going to see some pretty big steps forward from this Ohio State defense heading into 2023 here.
And that's the thing. It's like you are returning a fair amount of the production from what that unit was. I mean, you think guys like JT, Tommy Eichenberg, those guys were really, really good players, I thought, for them. You add a couple guys in the back end, and hopefully Denzel Burke, as you kind of saw in the spring game, kind of reemerges as that guy, that number one kind of corner. Because again, those were some of those missing pieces. But you add Tywone Malone in the portal now. You have Igbenogson. I think what they did was they had the core. It's always been there, but now they did fill in the missing pieces. And I also am kind of excited to see what these younger guys can do. I mean, you look at a guy like Sonny Styles coming up.
Oh, yeah.
It was really weak last year. And you lose, obviously, Hickman to the draft.
Right.
You don't know who – honestly, I think Styles might – I kind of see him starting it. And you just think they might be able to roll in some young guys and do what they do because there's a lot of talent behind them. And again, if the production wasn't there,
when I say Ohio State struggled like on the defensive side of the ball, it was with those big plays against Michigan. You look at Ohio State's defense on the aggregate, like the full season, play to play. Right. It's a pretty damn good defense, even against Michigan. You take out 5 plays, and I know that's kind of a major hypothetical. Take out 5 plays of that game, that Ohio State defense is probably holding Michigan to like under 21 points.
But frankly, you think even back to like the Penn State game, I mean, they give up a big play to Parker Washington because they can't tackle in the back end. It's like, again, you talk. I think you got some young guys coming up. You got another year with Jim Knowles. And
I think that's the biggest part. Like, it's inexcusable to have those breakdowns in defense. And I think year 2 under Jim Knowles, you're going to see a little less of those breakdowns because that, quite frankly, not giving up the explosive plays, we talk about explosive play metrics all the time here. Like, it's one of the biggest stats in college football. You got to make teams go earn 7 points. You can't give them for free. Have a safety falling down, have a cornerback not doing the right thing in coverage. So I really do think that year 2 under Jim Knowles, and I want to put you on the spot here. Out of these transfers, which one is your favorite? Because I do think Ohio State's done a very nice job in the portal. Some kind of interesting names. Dale, if I'm putting you on the spot here, your favorite transfer for this Ohio State transfer class here?
I mean, it's Igbenogson or Malone. I don't even think it's close. Like, I think their offensive portal additions are okay. Some of the guys up front, they make sense. Those positions really weren't a problem. I do think that, I mean, corner in D tackle, especially like at times getting gashed like that or giving up big plays are just too inexcusable kind of situations for a defense. And I think they did what they could do to address it, and hopefully it doesn't happen.
I like that. I might go with Josh Simmons, though. If he's as good as kind of advertised coming from San Diego State, because you take a look at Ohio State, and the biggest question mark you had with that team, I think one might have been cornerback on the other side of Denzel Burke, but the tackle play was not great in the spring game. Ryan Day's been kind of vocal about being a little concerned about what the tackles are going to be like this year. Bringing in a guy who's done it at a high level, I think, is massive. Like, it's really hard to find starting caliber tackles in the transfer portal. Ohio State did that. But again, massive fan. I hate to say it, but like a massive fan of what Ohio State's done in the transfer portal. I think they made their team a lot better in the positions they needed to make their team better in. So another massive get for Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes, bringing in Tywone Malone, former top 100 recruit nationally from the 2021 class. So again, appreciate the support you guys are showing. Wanted to keep it short, but if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.